Cellular respiration is basically a four-stage process, or four stages to this process, that is used to give our cells energy, essentially. So when you eat food, the food that you eat goes into your body. It's broken down into smaller molecules, such as glucose. What type of macromolecule is glucose? What type of macromolecule would you say glucose was? Glucose is sugar. What are sugars? What type of macromolecule or biomolecule is glucose? Anyone? Right, so it's a carbohydrate, right? So you eat a piece of bread, you break it down into glucose, it goes into your cell. Your cell cannot absorb that glucose and do anything with it until it transfers it to another source. Okay, so like if you bring rupees or euros or pounds or EC dollars into the US, you can't spend it here. You have to change it into a currency that can be readily spent in the US. All right, so it's a similar scenario with our cells. So the cell goes through a whole series of processes, different enzymatic reactions, trying to turn that glucose, the other substrates, we'll talk about those later, but mainly glucose, mainly carbohydrates, trying to turn that glucose into a source of energy that it can readily use. Now, what do your cells need energy to do? What do your cells need energy for? What do cells need energy for? What types of jobs or types of work do cells need energy for? Are cells just chilling?
Cellular respiration.
Okay, well, cellular respiration is how we make the energy, and it does need energy for that. So yeah. What else? Reproduction, yeah. Multiplying, dividing, repairing DNA, making hormones, making proteins, moving molecules around the cell, secreting those hormones, secreting those enzymes. So cells are doing lots of work. And in order to do that work efficiently, they need energy. And so they have to take that glucose and turn it into another form of energy that can be used to do cellular work. What's that other form of energy? What's that other form of energy that we have to turn glucose into? ATP, thank you, ATP. So the entire reason for cellular respiration, the entire backdrop, the big picture here, is taking that glucose and turning it into ATP. And the cell goes through quite a bit of effort to do that. There are four processes. There's glycolysis, which is the first part of breaking down that glucose. There's a linker step in the mitochondria where the products of glycolysis are transferred into acetyl-CoA. There's the Krebs cycle, also called the TCA cycle. And finally, there's the electron transport chain, where oxidative phosphorylation takes place within the mitochondria. So all these four stages explains how a single cell can take one of those biomolecules and harness some chemical energy from it. Okay. Let's look at a question here. So is it ready? Oh, it's not registered. I'll probably do that again. Okay, so we got 6 responses.
Does it say if it's received?
Not individually. 9, 10. Okay, so 11 looks good. 12. Okay, so let's see what everyone thought. Okay, so we got a bit of a split here with the majority saying C. Let's look at the question. Energy is released when proteins are broken down into amino acids. So the reaction is, a lot of persons said exothermic and catabolic, right? What does exothermic mean?
Energy is released outward.
Energy is released upward, perfectly. Okay, and what does catabolic mean?
Broken down.
Something is broken apart. Anabolic is sort of when things are built up. Like you take several amino acids, you build them up to make a polypeptide. That's an anabolic reaction. And then breaking that down to the opposite catabolic. So the answer is indeed C, which is exothermic and catabolic. So reaction that generates energy is exothermic or exergonic, and a reaction that requires or harnesses energy is endothermic or endergonic and anabolic. Let's look at another question here. We have another 30 seconds. Oops. Okay, so we got a bit of an even split between A and B, and then quite a significant amount of persons said C as well. So let's look at the question. In an endergonic reaction, there is more energy in reactants than products, more energy in products than reactants, more equal energy in products and reactants. So what did we say endergonic meant? What did we say endergonic meant? We just talked about endergonic reactions. What did we say it was to be endergonic? A reaction was endergonic. Right, so it's a build-up and energy is harnessed, right? It's not released, energy is harnessed, energy is stored. Okay, so is there more energy in the reactant or in the product? If we're storing energy here, is there more energy in the reactant or in the product? Okay, it's going to be in the product, correct, thank you. So there's more energy in the product because we're storing that energy. The purpose of the reaction, the purpose of an endergonic reaction is to make a product that has energy stored in it for later. Think about a battery pack. And most of you have your phones, and charging your phones is quite important. And there's lots of apps and things that burn your batteries. So sometimes you have an additional battery pack that stores some energy. Think about it in that way. And so you have additional energy stored in that battery pack. So now the battery pack, which is the product, has more energy. In an endergonic reaction, if you charged it up, and if you sort of ran it down throughout the day, it lost its energy, and there would be more product in the reactor. That's fascinating. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, the main goal of cellular respiration is to turn one of our substrates, one of our biomolecules, proteins, fats, mostly carbohydrates, into ATP. Now, ATP is a medium of energy exchange. Okay? What type of biomolecule is ATP? We talked about this in biomolecules. What type of biomolecule is ATP? Let's look at the structure. So there's adenosine, and there's 3 phosphates, or triphosphate. This is a nucleic acid, right? This is a nucleic acid. We have that nitrogenous base, which is in green here. This is your nitrogenous base, and because this has 2 rings, it's a purine. Then there's the carbon sugar, or the carbon ring. And then there are 3 phosphate groups attached here, 1, 2, 3 phosphates. Okay? So energy from exergonic reactions are used to make ATP. ATP is like that charged up battery pack, and it's holding on to stored energy, especially in that last phosphate. So ADP, which has 2 phosphate groups, and it doesn't have as much energy as adding on that 3rd phosphate. So between these 2 phosphates, there's a lot of energy stored here. And that energy can be used to harness or to run cellular mechanisms, to do cellular work, to move proteins and that sort of thing. So let's talk about ATP synthesis. Now, in order to make ATP, we're going to use ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, and we're going to add a 3rd phosphate on, and that 3rd phosphate, as we just mentioned, has lots of energy stored in it. So ATP is made from adenosine diphosphate, which has 2 phosphate groups, and that phosphate, that additional phosphate, which has lots of energy packed in it. Okay? And this is going to make ATP, and we're also going to release water. Okay? Because we're releasing water, what type of reaction is this? Because we're releasing water, what type of reaction is this? Right in the slide, sorry. It's a condensation reaction, right? It's a condensation reaction. It's also endergonic because we're storing energy. Okay, specifically 7 kilocalories per mole of energy is being stored in that 3rd phosphate group, in that bond between the 2nd and 3rd phosphate. Okay. Now there are 2 ways to make ATP. This is going to be very important as we go on throughout this course to distinguish between these 2 mechanisms of making ATP. The first one is called substrate level phosphorylation. Substrate level phosphorylation, right? And the second one is called oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. This requires an electron transport chain. Now I want you to bear in mind that both of these words have phosphorylation in it. Okay? I want you to make the connection that we're adding a phosphate group to ADP, hence the term phosphorylation. Now this can happen in 2 ways. We can take some type of molecule, in this instance it's molecule X, and molecule X has a phosphate on it. And ADP can go up to molecule X and grab the phosphate from molecule X, and that's going to leave us with ATP and that molecule X on its own. So essentially ADP pretty much robbed that molecule X of its phosphate. Okay? And that is called substrate level phosphorylation. We'll talk about how that happens in a minute. The second way is oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. And as the word oxidative in this name implies, this is going to require energy. The first one did not require, oxygen. This is going to require oxygen. The first mechanism did not require oxygen. The second mechanism will require oxygen. It's going to occur in the mitochondria, and this is where the electron transport chain is. Okay? And for this mechanism, we are going to find a free-floating phosphate. So this is called an inorganic phosphate because it's not attached to any other molecule. It's called inorganic. So ADP finds a free-floating phosphate not attached to anything else, attaches it onto itself, and you get ATP. Okay, so the 2 general ways to make ATP is to steal it from another molecule or to find it free-floating.